Hi guys, and welcome to Quiet Voice podcast channel. Tonight we're stepping into New York City during a blizzard in 1918, when snow swallows the streets, lamps fade behind white curtains, and one final train may be the only path home. You stand beneath a darkening sky as the first flakes tumble between the tall buildings. At first, the snow seems harmless, almost graceful. It rests on window ledges, carriage roofs, and the shoulders of hurried pedestrians. Then the wind rises from the river, sharp enough to sting your cheeks, and the gentle snowfall becomes something far more serious. So, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. As you listen, share your location and your local time in the comments. Perhaps you are somewhere warm with the rain against the glass. Perhaps winter waits outside your own door. Wherever you are, pull the blanket closer and let the city grow quiet around you. Now it is time to rest. You begin near the southern end of Manhattan, where the streets are already fading beneath fresh snow. The air carries the smell of coal smoke, wet wool, horse leather, and cold iron. Your boots press into the whitening pavement, leaving dark prints that disappear almost as quickly as you make them. New York in 1918 is a city of astonishing movement. Elevated trains thunder above avenues, streetcars rattle through crowded crossings, horses still pull delivery wagons beside motor cars that cough and bellow in the freezing air. Thousands of people depend on these systems every day, which is a grand achievement until winter decides to test every wheel, rail, wire, and human nerve at once. Records confirm that severe snowstorms could interrupt transport across the city, especially when wind pushed snow into deep drifts along exposed tracks. Crews worked with shovels, brooms, salt, and heavy equipment, but nature remained unimpressed by schedules. Snow has never shown proper respect for a printed timetable. You turn northward, keeping your head low as the wind drives flakes into your face. Shopkeepers hurry to bring signs indoors. A fruit seller covers wooden crates with canvas, though the oranges beneath seem strangely bright against the grey afternoon. A newspaper boy calls out the latest headlines, but his voice is carried away before you can understand more than a few broken words. Above you, office windows begin to glow. Inside, clerks gather papers and glance nervously at the thickening storm. Some decide to leave earlier. Others remain at their desks, trusting that the trains will continue running because trains, in their minds, are nearly as dependable as sunrise. This confidence is admirable and perhaps slightly foolish. Your destination lies across the city at a major railway station, where you hope to catch the last train home. The journey should be simple. You have made it many times. You know the route, the platform, and the familiar rhythm of departure. Yet each block now takes longer than the one before it. The sidewalks become slippery. People hold walls, railings, and one another for balance. A woman in a long coat lifts her skirt above the slush. A messenger boy pushes a bicycle that has become useless. A policeman stands at an intersection, his dark uniform turning white while he waves traffic forward with decreasing optimism. Oddly enough, early motorists sometimes carried blankets, ropes, chains, and even small shovels during difficult winter travel. These items were not signs of adventure. They were signs that the automobile, despite its modern appearance, could become a frozen metal ornament without much warning. A motor car slides sideways near the curb. Its driver climbs out, examines the wheels, and gives the machine a look usually reserved for an unreliable cousin. Nearby, a horse continues steadily through the snow, suggesting that progress may occasionally have four legs and a patient expression. The wind strengthens again. It whistles between buildings, shakes hanging signs, and sends loose paper spinning through the street. Snow gathers in doorways and against basement steps. The city seems to shrink. Familiar landmarks vanish. A church tower becomes a pale shadow. A row of houses dissolves into the storm. For a moment, it feels as though Manhattan has become an island in more than the usual sense. Water surrounds it beyond sight, while snow closes every visible road, and you hear bells from a streetcar somewhere ahead, followed by the scrape of wheels struggling against packed ice. Scholars continue to debate how ordinary city residents experienced major weather events, because official reports often describe transport delays, snowfall totals, and public costs while leaving quieter emotions unrecorded. How did a tired seamstress feel when the streetcar stopped? What passed through the mind of a father who knew his children were waiting? Numbers can measure snow, but they do not always measure worry. You reach a broad avenue where electric lights glow faintly through the white air. The storm now falls so heavily that people appear and disappear within seconds. Each stranger becomes a brief figure in a moving curtain, close enough to see, then suddenly gone. Your coat grows damp at the shoulders. Snow melts along your collar and sends a cold line down your neck. Your fingers stiffen inside your gloves. You think of home, of a warm kitchen, of a lamp beside the window, and of someone listening for your steps. Ahead, through the storm, the railway station finally emerges. Its stone entrance looks enormous and solemn, like a fortress built against distance itself. People hurry toward its doors from every direction. Some carry suitcases, some hold lunch pails, some led children wrapped in scarves. All of them bring the same hope beneath the snow. You climb the broad steps carefully. Behind you, New York disappears into white darkness. Before you, warm lamps shine beyond the doors, and somewhere inside, a great clock continues counting the minutes toward the last train homers. Inside the station, the first thing you notice is not warmth but noise. Boots strike stone, suitcases scrape across the floor. Porters call to one another, steam hisses, somewhere beyond the walls. The great room gathers every sound and sends it upward toward the high ceiling, where it blends into a low, restless thunder. You remove one glove and brush melting snow from your coat. The air smells of damp wool, coal smoke, floor polish, and strong coffee. It is warmer than the street, yet not comfortable. Cold follows people through every doorway and settles around their feet. The city waiting outside has already endured a difficult year. Men have gone overseas to fight in the Great War. Families read casualty lists with trembling hands. Factories work long hours. Food prices rise. Coal deliveries arrive late. Every household seems to be stretching something, whether it is money, patience, or the final spoonful of sugar. You move toward the departure board, though a crowd blocks your view. Hats and shoulders fill the space ahead. A tall man leans sideways, trying to read the chalked notices. A woman lifts a small child so he can breathe above the press of coats. The official times remain written in careful rows, but several have been crossed out. Others carry uncertain marks beside them. A railway clerk stands beneath the board with a stack of papers and the expression of a man who has answered the same question many times. Records confirm that wartime railways often carried troops, equipment, mail, workers, and civilian passengers at the same time. This placed enormous pressure on schedules and crews. A storm did not simply delay commuters, it disturbed a network already strained by national demands. You hear the clerk announce that trains are running late. No exact time can be given. The tracks north of the city are filling quickly, and switch points are beginning to freeze. Passengers respond with sigh, complaints, and the quiet stare of people who suspected bad news but hope to be proved wrong. Near a column, two factory workers speak in low voices. Their hands are rough, their faces pale with fatigue. They have spent the day assembling parts under bright lamps, while supervisors urge them to work faster. One says his wife has been saving coal by heating only the kitchen. The other says his mother has started cutting bread thinner. These are not dramatic confessions. No one raises a voice. Hardship has become ordinary enough to discuss like the weather. A group of soldiers stands near the ticket windows. Their uniforms are neat. Though their boots are wet, some are leaving the city. Others may have just arrived. One carries a paper parcel tied with string, another keeps touching the letter inside his breast pocket, as though checking that it remains real. Across the hall, a nurse sits alone on a wooden bench. She has loosened the scarf around her neck, but she still wears her cap. Her eyes are closed. Perhaps she is resting. Perhaps she is simply enjoying 1 minute in which no one asks her to hurry. The station clock moves with calm cruelty. Each minute passes cleanly, without concern for the people below. One curious footnote of wartime life is that many city residents became skilled at repairing, using, and improvising. Old coats were turned inside out to hide worn fabric, broken buttons were replaced with mismatched ones, newspapers were folded into extra insulation for shoes. Fashion became less about elegance and more about defeating the cold without admitting defeat. You see evidence of this everywhere. A boy wears a coat clearly made for someone larger. A woman has wrapped cloth around the handle of her suitcase. An elderly man has placed cardboard inside his boots. Nothing matches perfectly, yet everything serves a purpose. The station restaurant remains open and the line is long. People wait for coffee, soup and bread. A sign warns that certain foods are limited. Behind the counter, cups move rapidly from hand to hand. The workers appear exhausted, but they continue with practice speed. You buy a cup of coffee and hold it between both hands. The heat is weak, but welcome. Its bitterness settles on your tongue. Nearby, a child asks his mother whether the snow can bury the whole city. She tells him no. Her answer comes quickly enough to sound prepared. The year has taught people to protect children from more than weather. Adults speak softly about battles, shortages, and sickness. Doors close before difficult conversations begin. Newspapers disappear beneath cushions. Smiles are produced on command. No agreement has been reached on whether wartime hardship created stronger neighborhood bonds or simply forced people to hide their fear more carefully. Some historians emphasize cooperation, charity, and shared sacrifice. Others point to exhaustion, inequality, and the silent anger of those asked to give more than they could afford. Both possibilities seem present in the room. A wealthy couple stands near the center of the hall, dressed in heavy fur and polished shoes. A few yards away, a cleaning woman wrings water from the hem of her skirt. They wait under the same roof, beneath the same clock, but the storm will not cost them the same amount. For one passenger, a delay means missing dinner. For another, it means losing wages. For another, it means leaving a sick relative alone through the night. You finish the coffee and return the cup. The railway clerk raises his voice again. A line has been blocked. A maintenance crew is being sent out. Passengers should remain inside and wait for further instructions. The room shifts as people search for places to sit. Benches fill. Suitcases become stools. Children curl against their parents. Men unfold newspapers and pretend to read. You find a narrow space near a stone pillar through the tall windows. Snow presses against the glass in pale waves. The station seems less like a place of departure now and more like a harbour where every ship has been tied down. You listen to the tired breathing of the crowd beneath the announcements and footsteps. Another sound begins to emerge. It is the sound of a city trying to remain steady after months of strain, holding itself upright because there is no spare strength left for collapse. The station clock hangs above the main concourse with a face bright enough to command attention. Its black hands move with perfect confidence. Though nearly every promise beneath them has begun to fail, you watch the minute hand advance and feel the strange weight of time when there is nowhere useful to go. Passengers gather beneath the clock in loose circles. Some stand rigidly, as if posture alone might summon a train. Others pace between benches and ticket windows. A few keep checking watches hidden beneath coat sleeves, comparing private time with the larger public clock above. Each glance produces the same result. Another minute has passed. The departure board remains uncertain. Chalk marks have been added beside several routes, then rubbed away, leaving pale ghosts of earlier announcements. The smudged surface seems to admit that even official information can become tired. A station employee climbs a short ladder and writes a new delay beside one line. The crowd leans forward as though drawn by a single string. Before the man reaches the floor, questions begin. How long? Is the track blocked? Will the train still leave tonight? He answers carefully. Snow has covered several switches. Telegraph reports are arriving slowly. Crews are working beyond the station. Nothing has been cancelled yet. The word yet passes through the crowd with more force than the rest. Records from major railway terminals show that station clocks were kept with exceptional care because entire systems depended on shared time. Conductors, dispatchers, porters, and passengers all needed the same minute to mean the same thing. A clock could organise thousands of lives, though it could not clear a single frozen rail. You move closer to one of the tall windows. Cold air presses through the frame in thin, persistent streams. The draft touches your wrist where glove and sleeve fail to meet. It slips beneath collars, travels along the floor, and finds every passenger who believed the building would provide complete shelter. A porter pushes a luggage cart past you. One wheel squeaks at regular intervals. The sound repeats across the stone floor, small but impossible to ignore. Squeak, rattle, squeak, rattle. A young clerk sits on a suitcase nearby and counts coins in his palm. He may be calculating whether he can afford supper. A woman beside him unfolds a timetable and studies it as though the printed page might know more than the railway staff. Printed timetables in this period were objects of great trust. They offered precise departure times, arrival times, connections, and distances. They made travel appear orderly and modern. Yet a blizzard has little interest in printed certainty. Snow falls without consulting the schedule, which is rather inconsiderate of it. At the information desk, a line grows longer. People ask questions that cannot yet be answered. The clerk behind the counter maintains a professional voice, though fatigue is visible around his eyes. One passenger demands that a train be found immediately. Another insists that he has an important appointment. A third explains that his family is expecting him. The clerk listens to each story. Perhaps he understands that everyone believes their own reason is the strongest. Perhaps he has learned that telling an anxious traveller to remain calm is one of the fastest ways to produce the opposite result. A curious detail of station life is that experienced travellers sometimes chose meeting places beneath large clocks, because the landmark could be seen across a crowded hall. Friends, relatives, and business partners arranged to find one another there. The clock became more than an instrument. It became a place where promises were kept, or where people discovered that they would not be. You notice a man standing directly beneath it, holding a small bunch of winter flowers wrapped in paper. Snow has melted across his shoulders. He watches every doorway. No one joins him. He adjusts the flowers, checks his watch, and waits. At the far edge of the concourse, a child begins to cry. The sound is sharp at first, then softens into tired sobbing. His mother rocks him against her coat and whispers that the train will come soon. The promise seems meant for both of them. A gust enters when the outer doors open. Loose papers lift from the floor. Hats are held down. Several people turn toward the entrance, expecting news, but only more snow-covered travellers appear. They bring fragments of the city with them. A streetcar has stopped near the avenue. A wagon has overturned. A row of motorcars is trapped near a bridge. Someone claims the snow is already waist-deep in certain drifts. Someone else says the storm will pass within the hour. Rumour moves faster than any train. Scholars remain divided over how much trust ordinary passengers placed in railway authorities during severe disruptions. Some accounts suggest remarkable patience and confidence in modern systems. Others reveal anger, suspicion, and a growing awareness that large institutions could become helpless under pressure. You can sense both reactions around you. An elderly gentleman says the railway has handled worse. A younger man replies that the railway has not handled this. Their argument ends when neither can provide proof. The clock continues. The station lights flicker once, and the entire room falls silent. It lasts only a second. The lamps recover. glowing yellow against the high walls. But the brief darkness leaves an impression. You become aware of how dependent everyone is on fragile systems. Electric lights, telegraph wires, signal lamps, heating pipes, switch levers, steel rails, each seems permanent when working and surprisingly delicate when tested. A bell rings near the platforms. Every head turns. A gate attendant raises one hand and asks passengers to remain where they are. The bell signals an arriving service, but not the train you need. A local train crawls into the station carrying people from nearby districts. Its passengers step down with stiff legs and snow-covered luggage. Their faces reveal what the announcements do not. The journey has been slow. One man says the train stopped twice between stations. Another describes workers digging around a frozen switch by lantern light. A woman says branches are falling across the tracks farther north. The waiting crowd absorbs these details in silence. You return your gaze to the clock. The last scheduled departure draws nearer, though the platform remains closed. The minute hand moves without haste. It does not comfort, warn, or apologize. Beneath it, hundreds of people wait for motion. Above it, time travels low. The crowd begins to separate into smaller islands of conversation. Delay has changed the station. It is no longer merely a place where strangers pass one another without notice. Time has forced everyone to remain visible. You stand near a long wooden bench where 5 people have arranged themselves with careful discomfort. A factory seamstress sits at one end, her hands folded over a cloth bag. Beside her, a travelling salesman guards 2 leather cases between his boots. A soldier leans forward with his elbows on his knees. An older woman keeps a sleeping girl against her shoulder. At the far end, a newspaper printer wipes black ink from his fingers with a handkerchief that surrendered long ago. None of them plan to meet. All of them now share the same narrow strip of polished wood. The seamstress notices you looking for space and moves her bag onto her lap. You sit beside her, grateful for the small kindness. Her coat smells faintly of starch and machine oil. She tells the older woman that she works near Washington Square, sewing uniforms and winter garments. Her shift ended early because several workers could no longer reach the factory. The salesman listens, then says he has spent 3 days visiting shops across the city. He sells brushes, combs, buttons, and household goods. His voice carries the steady confidence of a man accustomed to entering unfamiliar rooms and speaking before anyone asks him to. The printer says the newspapers will sell quickly in the morning. The salesman asks whether there will be a morning edition. The printer replies that there is always a morning edition. His certainty sounds almost religious. Records from the period confirm that railway stations brought together people divided by occupation, income, neighbourhood, and social rank. Public transportation created rare shared spaces where domestic workers, merchants, soldiers, clerks, and wealthy travellers could stand beneath the same roof, even if they did not experience the journey in equal comfort. You see that difference clearly near the private waiting rooms. Attendants carry luggage for passengers who possess finer tickets and heavier coats. Cushioned chairs sit behind guarded doors. In the main concourse, families crowd onto hard benches or settle on the floor beside their bundles. The storm is equal only from a distance. A nurse approaches your bench and asks whether the sleeping child is warm enough. The older woman says the girl is her granddaughter. They were visiting relatives and expected to be home before dark. The nurse touches the child's forehead with the back of her hand. Her movement is gentle and quick. She says the girl appears tired rather than ill, but suggests keeping her away from the draft. Everyone nearby becomes slightly more alert at the word ill. The soldier offers his scarf. It is thick and dark, and still damp at one end. The older woman hesitates before accepting it. He tells her that the army issued him another, which may be true, or may simply be the polite invention of someone who has decided the child needs it more. The girl does not wake as the scarf is wrapped around her. One peculiar station custom is the quiet exchange of useful information among travellers. People who would never share names might share advice about a cheap boarding house, a reliable doctor, a warm restaurant, or the least crowded streetcar route. Delay turns strangers into temporary experts on one another's problems. The salesman proves this by explaining which northern lines are most exposed to drifting snow. The printer corrects him. The seamstress corrects both of them. She grew up near the route and knows where the track enters are cutting between hills. The soldier smiles. 3 minutes earlier, none of these people knew one another. Now they are conducting a railway conference with no official authority whatsoever. A porter passes and announces that additional benches are being brought from a storage room. Several men volunteer to help. They return carrying heavy wooden seats through the crowd while others clear space. The arrangement is imperfect, but more people can sit. You notice how quickly small rules form. Children and older passengers receive places first. Wet coats are kept away from sleeping faces. Luggage is pushed beneath benches to widen the passage. Someone begins collecting cups from the floor so no one slips. No decree creates this order, it rises from necessity. Scholars bicker over whether moments of public crisis reveal true community spirit, or merely temporary cooperation born from inconvenience. Some argue that shared hardship lowers social barriers. Others warn that these brief alliances often vanish as soon as normal life returns. For tonight, the distinction feels less important than the result. A young woman arrives carrying a violin case. Her hat is covered in snow, and one shoe has lost a button. She searches the room with growing panic. The salesman stands and asks whether she needs help. She explains that she was travelling with her brother, but they became separated near the ticket windows. The printer rises next, then the soldier. Within moments, several strangers are searching different corners of the station. The nurse remains with the young woman, speaking calmly. You watch faces turn, names called, hats lifted above the crowd. The brother is found near the baggage room 10 minutes later. He appears angry until he sees his sister. Then the anger collapses into relief so quickly that everyone pretends not to notice. She strikes his arm with one gloved hand. He embraces her. The violin case remains safely between them. A ripple of satisfaction passes through those who helped. Modest and almost shy. No one asks for thanks. The station simply absorbs the reunion into its growing collection of private dramas. Near the wall, a wealthy woman removes a fur-lined glove and offers a coin to a porter. Across the hall, the porter uses part of it to buy hot milk for a boy travelling alone. The coin moves through the room, changing meaning each time it changes hands. You listen as more stories emerge. A cook is trying to reach her sister in the Bronx. A bank clerk fears his pipes will freeze. A young mother worries that the milkman will not arrive in the morning. A musician has missed an evening performance and seems secretly relieved. A carpenter carries a wrapped wooden toy he made for his son. The station becomes a map of unseen homes. Every traveller is connected to a kitchen, a bedroom, a waiting lamp, or a person counting the hours. The great room still feels crowded, yet the crowd no longer seems shapeless. You begin to recognise faces. The soldier with the missing scarf, the seamstress with the cloth bag, the printer with the stained fingers, the child sleeping beneath borrowed wools. Outside, the wind continues to erase streets and tracks. Inside, names are exchanged, seats are shared, and small acts of care pass quietly from hand to hand. Beyond the platform gates, the storm has begun to erase the railway itself. You can see only fragments through the glass doors. A signal lamp glows red, then disappears behind a rush of snow. Steel rails emerge for a few yards beneath the station roof, dark and wet, before vanishing into white farther out. Men move through the storm carrying lanterns that swing like small, uncertain stars. A railway supervisor arrives near the gate with snow crusted across his cap. He speaks quietly to the attendant, but the nearest passengers lean closer. Frozen switches have stopped responding. Drifts are forming between the rails, telegraph messages from stations to the north are arriving slowly and sometimes not at all. The last detail unsettles the crowd A delay can be measured. Silence cannot. You move nearer to the gate and listen to the sounds beyond it. Shovels strike packed snow, metal tools scrape against iron. A whistle blows once, low and distant. The wind answers with a deeper roar beneath the great roof. Railway crews in this era rely on large ploughs, hand labour, heated switch equipment, and constant communication to keep lines open during winter storms. Records confirm that even a single frozen switch could halt several trains, because every engine depended on the safe movement of rails at junctions. One stubborn piece of ice could create a problem large enough to disappoint an entire city. Outside, a crew gathers around such a switch. They kneel in the snow with bars, brushes, and buckets of hot water. One worker holds a lantern close while another chips ice from the moving parts. Steam rises briefly, then disappears. Their coats are so thick with snow that they resemble figures carved from pale stone. A foreman raises his arm. The men pull together. The switch moves only a few inches. They begin again, inside the station. Passengers watch with the solemn attention usually given to a performance. No music plays, no curtain rises, yet every movement matters. A telegraph operator appears at a side office behind a glass partition. He wears rolled sleeves despite the cold and bends over his instrument as messages tap through the wire. The sound is delicate, almost cheerful, which feels inappropriate given the news it carries. Tap, pause, tap. Another station reports heavy drifting. Tap, tap, pause. A freight train is stopped near a cutting. Tap, pause, pause. A maintenance engine is attempting to reach a block section. The operator writes each message by hand and passes the paper to a dispatcher. Some notes return with instructions, others are placed beneath a weight and left unanswered. Oddly enough, telegraph operators often develop such familiarity with the rhythm of their equipment that they could recognize the individual manner of another operator. A hurried sender, a careful sender, and an irritated sender might all sound different through the same machine. Even metal tapping on a desk could reveal personality. Tonight, the messages seem tense. A porter explains that snow has covered the track further north so completely that crews must probe ahead with long poles. The rails remain beneath the surface, but their exact edges are difficult to see. Workers follow the line between memory, signal posts, and the faint shape of the raised track bed. A passenger asks why a locomotive cannot simply push through. The porter looks toward the storm. He says an engine can push snow, but it cannot safely ignore what may be hidden beneath it. The answer settles the question. Near the baggage room, railway workers begin unloading tools from wooden crates. Heavy gloves, spare lanterns, coils of rope, iron bars, and sacks of sand are carried through a service door. One man brings several long-handled brooms, another carries a box of signal flares. The preparation is practical, but it carries an uncomfortable message. The railway is not waiting for the storm to end, it expects a long struggle. A curious footnote of winter rail travel is that crews sometimes spread sand by hand to improve traction on icy rails. Sand could give driving wheels the grip they needed to begin moving. A great machine of steel and steam might depend on nothing more glamorous than dry grains poured carefully in the right place. You imagine the contrast: a locomotive weighing many tons, a wooden bucket, a handful of sand. Progressors always enjoy pretending it is more independent than it truly is. The telegraph operator suddenly stops writing. He adjusts the instrument and tries again. No answer comes from one station on the northern lines. The dispatcher joins him. Both men listen. The room around the office becomes quiet as passengers notice their concern. The operator sends another call. His fingers move quickly. The instrument clicks into the silence. Still no reply. No agreement has been reached on how often failed communication during Major storms reflected broken wires, exhausted operators, damaged equipment, or simple confusion between stations. Official accounts sometimes present a clear chain of events, while personal memories describe uncertainty, rumour, and long periods when no one knew what was happening beyond the next signal. The dispatcher finally leaves the office and speaks with the station manager. Their conversation is low and serious. A map is unfolded across a desk. One finger follows the northern route, another marks a point where the line bends beside open ground. A messenger is sent toward the platforms. Within minutes, a small maintenance engine is prepared beneath the roof. It is shorter than the passenger locomotives, built for work rather than elegance. Lamps are fastened to its front. Shovels and tools are loaded into a rear car. Several crewmen climb aboard, stamping snow from their boots. The engine releases a cloud of steam. The platform fills with the smell of coal, oil, and wet iron. Passengers step closest to the windows as the maintenance train begins to move. Its wheels turn slowly, sand dropped onto the rails. The front lamp presses a narrow beam into the white darkness. For a few seconds, the engine remains visible. Then the storm swallows it. Only the sound remains, a deep mechanical pulse fading beneath the wind. You look toward the empty tracks and understand that the journey home now depends on those men moving into darkness, clearing one switch, one drift, and one uncertain mile at a time. The smell of food begins to spread through the station as paper parcels open across laps and suitcase lids. You notice it first near the benches, where the seamstress unties a length of string around a small package. Inside are 2 thick slices of bread with a little cheese pressed between them. She studies the sandwich for a moment, then cuts it carefully with a pocket knife and offers half to the older woman beside her. The woman refuses once. The seamstress offers again. This time, the woman accepts. Around them, other passengers begin examining what they have carried from work, from kitchens, or from shops visited hours earlier. A clerk unwraps hard-boiled eggs from newspaper. A carpenter opens a tin containing cold potatoes. The young woman with the violin finds an apple in her coat pocket, bruised on one side but still firm. The station restaurant remains crowded, and the line bends around a stone column. Behind the counter, workers pour coffee into heavy cups and ladle soup from a steaming pot. The room smells of onions, roasted grain, damp coats, and the faint sweetness of baked apples. You join the line. It moves slowly, but no one complains loudly. Hunger has softened the crowd. People are conserving energy now, as though every argument might require strength needed later. A menu board hangs above the counter. Several items have been covered with slips of paper. Bread is available, soup is available, coffee remains, though the pot appears to be producing more colour than flavour. You buy a bowl of vegetable soup and a slice of bread. The bowl warms your fingers as you carry it toward an empty ledge beside the wall. Steam touches your face. The first spoonful tastes mostly of cabbage and salt, but it feels rich simply because it is hot. Records confirm that wartime food programs encouraged households and restaurants to reduce the use of wheat, meat, sugar, and fats so more supplies could support military needs abroad. People learned new recipes, accepted substitute ingredients, and endured meals that occasionally treated pleasure as an unnecessary luxury. A man eating beside you studies his bread with suspicion. He says it contains more cornmeal than wheat. His companion replies that at least it does not contain sawdust. The first man considers this standard and agrees that the meal is therefore a success. Near the platform gate, a railway employee carries a tray of coffee to workers returning from the exposed tracks. Their faces are red from the wind, ice clings to their eyebrows and collars. They drink while standing, wrapping both hands around the cups. One of them removes his gloves and reveals fingers roughened by cold. Another has torn the knee of his trousers. They speak quietly about the switches and the growing drifts, but the words are lost beneath the station noise. A curious footnote from winter travel is that passengers often carried food because dining service could be expensive, limited, or unreliable. Sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, fruit, biscuits, and small flasks of coffee could turn an unexpected delay into something survivable. The true guardian of civilization may not be the locomotive. It may be a sensible person who remembered to pack lunch. You return to the bench with your bread. The salesman has opened one of his sample cases. For one hopeful second, several people appear to expect food. Instead, the case contains combs, buttons, shoe brushes, and small household tools arranged in neat rows. He looks at the disappointed faces. Then he reaches beneath the display and produces a paper bag of peppermint sweets. The transformation is immediate. He gives one to the sleeping child, who wakes just enough to accept it. He offers another to the soldier, who refuses until the salesman says that no military regulation forbids peppermint. The soldier takes one and smiles. The sweets pass along the bench. Their sharp fragrance cuts through the heavier smells of soup and wet wool. People who have spent hours guarding their belongings now share sugar with strangers. A woman sitting on the floor nearby opens a parcel containing slices of roast chicken. She divides them among her 2 sons, keeping only a small piece for herself. The younger boy notices and pushes part of his portion back toward her. She tells him she's not hungry. He does not believe her. Neither do you. Across the hall, a group of railway porters has gathered around a crate turned upside down as a table. One man pours coffee from a metal pot. Another passes around bread spread with dark preserves. Their conversation rises and falls with tired laughter. They speak of streets buried near their homes, of shoes that will never dry by morning, and of supervisors who somehow remain clean during every emergency. This observation receives broad agreement. One porter tells a story about a passenger who packed 3 hats but no gloves. Another describes a gentleman who tried to tip him with a theatre ticket for a performance cancelled by the storm. The men laugh quietly, not because the stories are extraordinary, but because laughter creates warmth of its own. Arguments split along different lines among historians who study food during times of crisis. Some view shared meals as strong evidence of social unity. Others caution that stories of generosity can hide unequal access. Since many families had little food available to share in the first place, the station holds both truths. A well-dressed passenger leaves half a meal untouched on a restaurant plate. A cleaner waits until the table is empty, then wraps the bread in a napkin and slips it into her pocket. No one comments. A mother counts coins near the counter and realizes she is short of the price of hot milk. The clerk looks at the coins, then at the child in her arms. He pours the milk anyway and closes the cash drawer as though the matter has been settled by perfect arithmetic. The mother thanks him. He shakes his head and turns toward the next customer. You dip the final piece of bread into your soup. The bowl is nearly empty now. Its warmth has moved from your hands into your chest, easing the tightness created by cold and uncertainty. Conversation spreads more easily as people eat. The seamstress tells her about a room she rents above a bakery. The printer describes the machinery used to set tomorrow morning's headlines. The carpenter unwraps the wooden toy he carries for his son. It is a small horse with wheels, polished smooth and painted red. The child beneath the soldier's scarf reaches toward it. The carpenter lowers the toy so she can roll it along the bench. Its tiny wheels click over scratches in the wood. For several minutes, the platform gates cease to matter. The crowd becomes quieter. Cups are passed. Parcels grow lighter. Crumbs collect on folded paper. Outside, the storm continues its hard work. Inside, supper is made from whatever people possess, and comfort is measured in spoonfuls, shared slices, and the brief sweetness of peppermint. The station begins to change as certainty drains away. Official announcements grow less frequent, while private reports multiply. A man arriving from the western entrance claims that a passenger train has stalled beyond the river. A woman near the ticket windows insists that 2 lines have already closed. Someone else says a bridge is blocked by ice, although no one can name the bridge. You hear each version travel through the crowd, gathering detail as it moves. A delay becomes a breakdown. A breakdown becomes a collision. a collision becomes a disaster witnessed by a cousin, a neighbour, or a man who supposedly spoke with an engineer. No one seems to know the engineer's name. You stand near a column as 3 passengers debate whether the northern route is still open. One has heard that a freight engine is trapped in a drift. Another says the drift has been cleared. The third claims there was never a freight engine at all. They speak with great confidence. Confidence, you notice, is not the same as knowledge. The station manager appears near the information desk and raises his voice. He announces that no serious accident has been confirmed. Crews remain on the line. Passengers should ignore unverified reports and wait for official instructions. For several moments, the crowd quiets. Then a man asks what has been confirmed. The manager replies that conditions remain difficult. This answer satisfies no one. Newspapers in 1918 often depended on telegraph messages, telephone calls, railway reports, and accounts brought directly by travellers. Records confirm that severe weather could slow or interrupt every one of these channels at once, leaving editors, officials, and ordinary citizens to assemble events from incomplete fragments. The printer with ink-stained fingers understands this better than most. He stands beside the bench, listening to 2 men argue about a blocked tunnel. When they pause, he says the morning paper will probably print 3 different explanations in 3 different editions. The salesman asks which explanation will be correct. The printer smiles. He says that depends on which edition survives the night. Near the restaurant, a rumour spreads that the station will close its doors. Families begin gathering bags. Several passengers move toward the exits, only to discover that the doors remain open and no order has been given. A porter calls out that everyone should stay calm. A woman carrying a basket asks whether calm passengers receive earlier trains. The porter admits that they do not. She returns to her seat. One scandalous aside from railway life concerns the unofficial trade in privileged information. Travellers sometimes offered coins, cigars, or favours to employees in exchange for early news about departures and platform changes. Most of these secret reports were no more reliable than public announcements, but people have always enjoyed paying extra for uncertainty when it arrives in a confidential tones. You observe a well-dressed man draw a young porter aside. A coin changes hands. The porter listens to a question, glances toward the gates, and whispers something. The man returns to his wife with an expression of importance. He tells her a train will leave within 20 minutes. 20 minutes pass. Nothing happens. His wife says nothing, which appears to trouble him more than criticism would. At the far end of the hall, a soldier has heard that all military passengers will be placed on a special train. Other soldiers gather around him. One asks where the information came from. The soldier points toward another man. That man points toward a clerk. The clerk denies saying any such thing. The special train disappears as quickly as it appeared. You begin to understand that rumours serve more than one purpose. Some express fear, some offer hope, some allow a person to feel useful in a room where no one has control. A father tells his children that the railway is preparing a powerful engine able to push through any snow. He describes it with lamps brighter than daylight and wheels taller than a man. The children listen with wide eyes. Perhaps he believes the signal. Perhaps he simply needs them to stop trembling. At the information desk, the nurse asks directly whether the Northern Line has suffered an accident. The clerk tells her that no accident has been reported. She asks whether communication remains open with every station. The clerk hesitates. That hesitation becomes more alarming than any answer. Your ears begin separating the sounds of the station into layers. The sharp call of a newsboy, the low murmur of conversations, the scrape of luggage, the nervous laugh that follows a frightening claim, the repeated phrase, "I heard," spoken by people who heard very little. A man rushes in through the outer doors, covered in snow. He announces that he has walked from several blocks away because streetcars have stopped. His words are true enough, but by the time the story reaches the benches, every streetcar in Manhattan has been abandoned beneath the storm. A railway official posts a written notice beside the departure board. Service delayed. Track clearance underway. No departure time available. The notice is plain, but passengers crowd around it as if hidden meaning might appear between the lines. No agreement has been reached among scholars on whether rumour during public emergencies is mostly harmful or sometimes useful. False claims can spread panic, yet informal communication can also warn people when official channels are slow, cautious, or incomplete. The difficulty lies in knowing which voice deserves trust while events are still unfolding. You watch that question move through the hall. Some passengers trust uniform, some trust age, some trust confident speech, some trust anyone who has just entered from outside. A woman near you trusts no one at all. She keeps her ticket folded inside one glove and refuses to leave her suitcase unattended, even when offered a seat. A bell rings beyond the gates. The room stills. A dispatcher steps onto a raised platform with a sheet of paper in his hand. He announces that the maintenance crew has reached the first block junction. One track may soon be usable, but another heavy drift lies farther north. A wave of relief moves through the crowd, followed almost immediately by fresh questions. Which track? Which train? How soon? The dispatcher offers no promises. Yet this small piece of verified news changes the room. Voices lower, bags settle. People return to benches and walls. You remain beneath the high lamps, listening as false stories weaken around one hard fact. Somewhere beyond the station, men have reached the junction. The rails are not clear, but the line is not lost. Cold begins to gather inside the station with the patience of a living thing. It settles first along the window, where frost creeps across the lower panes in pale branching patterns. Then it moves across the floor, collecting beneath benches and around luggage. The stone walls seem to release the chill they have stored all evening, and the great hall loses the last illusion of comfort. You pull your coat tighter. The fabric around your shoulders is still damp. Your gloves no longer feel warm, only less cold than bare skin. When you flex your fingers, the joints resist. A station worker carries a coal scuttle toward a side corridor. Two passengers watch him pass, and both notice how little coal remains inside. Soon the heating pipes begin knocking. The sound travels through the walls in irregular bursts. Ta, clang, silence. Then another hollow complaint. A maintenance man kneels beside a metal grill and places one hand near it. Almost no warmth rises. He calls for another worker, and together they remove the cover to inspect the pipe below. People nearby lean closer. The men say nothing alarming, but their faces suggest that the heating system is losing pressure. Records confirm that large public buildings in the early 20th century often depended on coal-fired boilers for heat. When coal supplies ran low, machinery failed, or outside temperatures fell sharply, even impressive stations could become bitterly cold. Monumental architecture is excellent at inspiring awe and rather less talented at keeping toes warm. Attendants begin closing unused waiting rooms to concentrate heat in the main concourse. Doors are shut, curtains are drawn across certain passages. Families are asked to move away from the draftiest walls. The crowd becomes denser. You find yourself standing shoulder to shoulder with people who would normally maintain a polite distance. Wet sleeves touch, suitcases press against ankles, breath hangs faintly in the air near the coldest windows. A woman complains that someone has stepped on her skirt. A man insists that he has not moved. Another passenger tells them both to save their strength. Patience, which had survived hunger and rumour, now begins to thin beneath the cold. Near the ticket windows, two men argue over a place beside a heating vent. One arrived first, the other has an elderly father with him. Voices rise, hands point, several people turn to watch. The nurse approaches before the disagreement grows worse. She asks the first man to give up half the space rather than all of it. A wooden crate is placed beside the vent so the elderly passenger can sit. The solution is imperfect. It works. Across the hall, station workers carry folded blankets from a storage room. There are not enough for everyone, so they are given to children, older travellers, and those who appear unwell. Each blanket becomes the centre of a small arrangement, with 2 or 3 people sharing what was intended for one. Oddly enough, travellers sometimes use newspapers as emergency insulation by folding sheets beneath coats or wrapping them around feet. The method was neither elegant nor especially quiet, but elegance becomes a distant concern when cold air reaches your socks. The printer distributes several unsold papers. You accept one and fold it beneath your coat. The paper crackles whenever you move. A headline presses against your ribs. It is not dignified, but warmth has very forgiving standards. The child wrapped in the soldier's scarf now sits awake beneath a shared blanket. She rolls the little wooden horse along the bench and whispers to it. Her grandmother rubs her hands together and watches the outer doors. Each time they open, wind enters like an intruder. Snow blows across the floor in brief white bursts. Porters push the doors closed with both hands. One man struggles with a latch that has begun to freeze. He strikes it gently with the handle of a tool, then less gently when politeness fails. The cold iron finally catches. A cheer rises from several nearby passengers. The porter bows as though he has completed a grand performance. At the restaurant counter, coffee becomes more valuable than food. The line stretches farther than before. Cups are refilled with weaker brew as supplies diminish. Some passengers ask only for hot water. A woman warms her hands around a cup she does not drink. A young clerk holds his cup beneath his chin, letting the steam reach his face. A railway worker pours a little hot water into his gloves, then thinks better of it and shakes them dry. A curious detail in winter stations is that people often gathered around any source of warmth. Even machinery not designed for comfort, lamps, kitchen doors, boiler pipes, and steam vents became temporary hearths. Human beings can turn almost anything into a fireplace if sufficiently determined. You move toward a wall lamp and hold your hands near its glass. The heat is barely noticeable. Still you remain. Scholars continue to disagree over how well prepared city authorities and transport companies were for extreme winter conditions during this period. Some reports praise rapid response and dedicated workers. Others describe shortages, uneven planning, and systems that functioned only because exhausted employees improvised under pressure. You can see improvisation for ASU. A porter stuffs cloth beneath the doorway. A cook sends heated bricks wrapped in towels to the waiting area. A cleaner spreads sawdust near melted snow to prevent falls. A baggage clerk opens wooden crates and uses the empty boards to create barriers against drafts. No single act transforms the station, but together they hold the cold at a distance. For a while, then the electric lights dim. A low murmur passes through the crowd. The lamps recover, but not fully. Their glow turns softer and more yellow. Shadows deepen between the columns. The ceiling seems farther away. The heating pipes stop knocking. This silence feels worse than the noise. The station manager announces that coal is being conserved. Certain lamps will be extinguished, and passengers should remain in the central areas. One row of lights goes dark, then another. The concourse contracts into pools of dim gold surrounded by shadow. People shift closer together. Arguments fade, replaced by the quieter sounds of endurance, coughing, footsteps, the rustle of paper inside the coats, the scrape of hands against cold fabric. You feel the rough grain of the wooden bench beneath your palm as someone makes room beside them. You sit. A stranger presses a heated brick near your boots and says to pass it along when the warmth reaches you. The brick is wrapped in an old towel. Its heat is faint but real. You hold it for a moment, then slide it toward the next pair of frozen feet. Beyond the glass, wind drives snow sideways across the tracks. Inside Viodel, every remaining warmth is shared, measured, and passed from one person to another before it disappears. Your mind drifts away from the hard bench and toward another winter, one softened by distance. You remember snow that arrived without urgency. It gathered on fences, window ledges, and quiet fields, rounded the corners of sheds and softened the roofs of houses. No timetable depended on it. No signal lamp vanished behind it. Snow belonged to games, school holidays, and the slow pleasure of watching the world become unfamiliar. Perhaps your childhood home stood far from New York. Perhaps it occupied a narrow city street where neighbours knew which windows glowed late at night. Memory does not demand perfect geography. It gives you a kitchen, a stove, and a coat hanging near the door. You can almost smell bread toasting on iron. A kettle murmurs. Wet mittens lie beside the fire, releasing the faint scent of wool and melted snow. Someone warns you not to place them too close to the heat. You promise to obey and then move them slightly closer when no one is watching. Outside, footsteps creak over packed snow. Inside, the floorboards hold warmth. The station remains around you, but its sounds begin to resemble older ones. The hiss of steam becomes a kettle. The distant scrape of shovels becomes a neighbour clearing a path. A porter dragging a crate recalls a wooden sled crossing a porch. Memory has no respect for walls. Across the concourse, the Soppendersster studies the small red horse in his hands. The child who borrowed it has fallen asleep again, so he polishes one wheel with his sleeve. His expression suggests another room, another child, and another promise to return home before bedtime. Records confirm that family life in the early 20th century often followed strong seasonal patterns. Winter evenings brought more indoor work, reading, sewing, mending, music, and storytelling. In homes with limited heating, family members gathered closely around the warmest room, not always from affection, though affection benefited from the arrangement. You picture such a room. A mother repairs a shirt beneath a lamp. A grandfather reads a newspaper aloud, pausing to complain about politics or prices. Children play quietly at the table, unless quietness has been requested, in which case they become mysteriously louder. A cat occupies the best place near the stove and contributes nothing to household expenses. The image brings a smile to your face. Beside you, the printer has stopped talking. He stares toward the dim lamps with his hands clasped between his knees. You ask whether he has far to travel. He names a neighbourhood north of the station and says his wife will be waiting. She dislikes storms. Every winter, she lights an extra lamp and places it in the front window. He says this with mild embarrassment, as if such tenderness should remain private. You tell him the lamp sounds sensible. He nods. Then he admits that he looks for it every time. A curious footnote of winter domestic life is that people sometimes warmed beds with heated stones, bricks, or metal pans filled with hot coals. The practice could make cold sheets more welcoming, provided no one scorched the blankets or set the bed on fire. Comfort has occasionally required a surprising degree of supervision. You imagine a heated stone wrapped in cloth and placed beneath heavy quilts. The thought is so vivid that your feet almost believe it. A woman nearby begins humming under her breath. The tune is simple and slow. Her daughter rests against her shoulder, eyes half closed. A few people recognize the melody, but no one joins loudly. The station does not become a concert hall. It becomes something smaller and kinder, a room where one familiar tune is enough. Your own memories continue to shift. You see a schoolyard covered in fresh snow. Boots leave crooked trails. Children build forts that appear magnificent until examined by adults. A snowman leans dangerously to one side, wearing a hat too valuable to have been donated willingly. Someone throws a snowball! Someone protests. Someone throws another. Cold reddens every cheek, yet no one wishes to go inside until an older voice calls from a doorway. The station clock interrupts the image with a measured strike. 1 hour has turned into another. You open your eyes fully. The child beneath the blanket is watching the red horse again. Her grandmother tells her about winters in the countryside, where snow sometimes rose above the lower windows. The girl asks whether people became trapped indoors forever, and the grandmother says no. They baked pies. This answer satisfies the child completely. Scholars remain divided over how accurately childhood memories preserve the past. Some argue that emotion strengthens important details. Others suggest that nostalgia edits hardship, removing frozen pipes, thin meals, and exhausted parents while leaving behind firelight and sweet bread. Both ideas feel true. A safe winter may not have been safe in every way. Perhaps the roof leaked. Perhaps coal was expected. Perhaps adults worried quietly after children went to sleep. Yet memory chooses the moment when a blanket was placed around your shoulders. It keeps the sound of a spoon against a cup. It saves the shape of lamplight on a familiar wall. Near the restaurant, an elderly man tells the salesman about a blizzard from his youth. He claims the snow covered every fence post in his town. The salesman asks how tall the fences were. The old man says they were very tall. The seamstress asks whether he measured them. He says he was a child and had better things to do. No one challenges him further. Stories grow warmer in the telling, snow deepens, walks lengthen, kitchens become brighter. The people who are gone return to their chairs for a few quiet sentences. You listen as passengers trade memories. A soldier recalls skating on a frozen pond. A nurse remembers cinnamon on warm milk. A mother describes sewing bells onto a child's boots so she could hear him moving through deep snow. The young woman with the violin remembers her father playing music while frost covered the windows. Each memory opens a small door. For a moment, the station contains dozens of homes at once. You feel the pull of your own destination more strongly now. Home is no longer merely a place to escape the cold. It is a collection of repeated things, a familiar latch, a chair that creaks, a cup kept in the same cupboard, a voice asking why you are late while already knowing the answer. You imagine approaching through snow, a lamp shines behind curtains. The door opens before you knock. Warm air reaches your face. The picture remains so clear that you hold it carefully, like a match cupped against the wind. A cough rises from the far side of the concourse. It is not loud, yet the sound travels farther than conversation. Several heads turn. A woman near the ticket windows lifts a handkerchief to her mouth. The people closest to her shift almost imperceptibly, each pretending the movement has another cause. You notice the space opening around her. The station remains crowded, but for fear creates its own distance. Another cough follows near the restaurant, then one beside the baggage room. Winter has always filled public places with sore throats and tired lungs. Yet this year every small illness carries a darker possibility. The influenza outbreak has moved through New York with terrible speed. Families have watched healthy people weaken within days. Hospitals have filled. Nurses have worked until exhaustion becomes ordinary. Notices have warned against careless coughing, crowded rooms, and unnecessary gatherings. The station is now all three. You breathe through your scarf and try not to make the gesture obvious. Around you, others do the same. Records confirm that New York health officials use public notices, inspections, reporting rules, and restrictions on gatherings to slow the spread of influenza during 1918. The city did not close every public institution in the same way as some other places, and daily life continued beneath a constant layer of caution. That caution is visible in the smallest movements. A man wipes a bench before sitting. A mother pulls her children closer when someone sneezes. The salesman stops offering peppermint sweets by hand and pours them directly into open palms. The nurse moves through the waiting area with renewed attention. She asks a pale young man whether he feels feverish. He says he's only cold. She touches his forehead and studies his eyes. He repeats that he's only cold. She leads him toward a quieter corner anyway. Noah objects. The older woman beside the sleeping child adjusts the scarf around the girl's face. Her hands tremble slightly. The child asks why everyone is whispering. The woman says people are tired. This is true, though not complete. A railway clerk places a handwritten notice near the information desk asking passengers to cover coughs and avoid crowding. The request would be more useful if the building contained somewhere else to stand. A few travellers read the notice and laugh bitterly. Others take it very seriously. One curious footnote of the influenza era is that people wore protective face coverings made from layers of gauze. Though their quality and use varied greatly, Some tied them neatly, others left them loose beneath the nose, proving that human beings can follow instructions with remarkable creativity. A station employee appears wearing such a covering. His voice becomes muffled as he announces that anyone feeling ill should report to the first aid room. The announcement causes several people to examine their own breathing. You become aware of your throat. Is it dry? Does your forehead feel warm? Are your shoulders aching from sickness or simply from cold and fatigue? The mind can create symptoms from fear alone, and tonight it has abundant material. Near the wall, the young woman with the violin opens her case. Instead of lifting the instrument, she removes a folded cloth and gives it to her brother. He ties it around his face. She keeps another for herself. Their movements are calm, almost practiced. The printer watches them and admits that 2 workers at his newspaper have been absent for several days. No one knows whether they are recovering. He says the presses continue because the city needs information. The seamstress replies that the factory continued when half the tables were empty. The soldier says training continued too. Each statement lands softly. Work goes on because people depend on it. Work goes on because employers demand it. Work goes on because stopping is frightening. Scholars still dispute how much public behaviour during the influenza crisis was shaped by trust, necessity, denial, or simple lack of choice. Some people followed health guidance carefully. Others ignored it. Many understood the danger but still had to ride trains, earn wages, care for relatives, and enter crowded places. You look around the hall and see that history does not offer everyone the luxury of perfect caution. A cleaner must touch abandoned cups. A porter must lift luggage from many hands. A clerk must answer questions at close range. The nurse must approach the sick rather than retreat from them. Near the first aid room, the pale young man sits beneath a blanket. A cup of water rests beside him. The nurse returns carrying a thermometer and a basin. His eyes follow her with quiet embarrassment. He says he cannot miss another day of work. She says work will manage without him. He does not appear convinced. A child begins coughing near the centre benches. The sound is dry and repeated. Her father gathers her quickly and asks where the first aid room is located. Passengers make a path without being asked. Fear remains in their faces, but so does concern. The nurse kneels before the child as she listens to her breathing and asks several questions. The father answers too quickly. The child says her throat hurts because she's been crying. The nurse gives her warm water and asks them to remain apart from the main crowd. Relief moves through those nearby, though no certainty has been offered. The station manager orders 2 more windows opened for ventilation. Cold air rushes inside. A groan rises from the passengers. Health and warmth have become rivals. The manager stands beneath the lamps while complaints surround him. He explains that fresh air may reduce risk. Someone asks whether freezing to death is now the official railway policy. A few tired laughs follow. The windows remain open. You feel the wind against your cheek and accept it. The cold is immediate. Illness is invisible. That makes the invisible danger harder to bear. The nurse passes near you and notices the newspaper folded beneath your coat. She asks whether you feel well. You tell her you are tired, chilled, and eager to leave. She says that describes nearly everyone in the station. Her smile is faint but kind. She advises you to keep your scarf over your mouth. Avoid touching your face, and rest whenever possible. Then she moves on, carrying her basin toward another passenger. You watch her disappear into the crowd. All around you, people listen to every breath, every cough, every rustle of cloth. The storm has trapped bodies together. The sickness has taught them to fear closeness. Between those 2 forces, the station waits in uneasy silence, each stranger hoping the person beside them is healthy, and hoping they are healthy too. Midnight arrives without ceremony. The station clock reaches 12 while hundreds of people watch it, yet no cheer rises and no bell brings relief. The black hands meet beneath the pale face, and the promised hour becomes only another point in the night. You hear the clock strike, 1 measured note, then another. Each sound rolls through the concourse and fades among the columns. By the final stroke, the room feels older. The last train should have left. Its platform remains closed. Passengers look toward the gate as though the simple act of staring might force it open. The attendant stands beside the chain with both hands clasped behind his back. He has answered every question he can answer, and several he cannot. A man asks whether the service is now officially cancelled. The attendant says no. A woman asks whether it will depart. He says that no departure has been authorised. The difference is technically precise and emotionally useless. You remain seated, knees stiff, while the night presses against the tall windows. The storm beyond the glass has lost all shape. There are no streets, roofs, or signal posts, only white movement against darkness. A dispatcher crosses the hall carrying a lantern and a folder of messages. People rise as he passes. He does not stop. This produces a new wave of murmuring. The printer folds his newspaper, though he has not read the same page for nearly an hour. The seamstress rests her head against the stone pillar. The soldier walks slowly toward the gate, then turns back before reaching it. Everyone appears suspended between leaving and staying. Records confirm that late railway departures could depend on a chain of permissions involving station masters, dispatchers, signal operators, and crews positioned along the route. A train could be mechanically ready yet still unable to move until the track ahead was judged safe. Safety is a simple word when spoken beneath warm lamps. Outside, it means men probing buried rails by lantern light. Inside, it means waiting. A railway official finally climbs onto a wooden bench so he can be seen. His coat is open and his collar has wilted with dampness. He asks for silence. The crowd gives it reluctantly. He announces that the maintenance engine has cleared the first junction and reached the second drift. One passenger track is partly open. A fallen branch has damaged a signal line farther north, and communication is being maintained through temporary measures. The last train has not been cancelled. It cannot yet depart. A sigh moves through the station. It is not relief. It is endurance taking another breath. Someone asks how long the repairs will require. The official says he cannot estimate. A second voice demands a firm answer. The official. He repeats that none can be given. You sense anger building, not sharp enough for violence, but heavy enough to change the room. People have surrendered hours, food, warmth, and certainty. Now midnight has taken the final proof that the evening is still proceeding according to plan. A curious footnote of railway culture is that passengers often treated the final train of the night as a sacred promise. Missing it could mean paying for lodging, walking many miles, or remaining in a station until morning. Timetables therefore carried a moral weight far beyond ink and paper. Tonight, that promise hangs above everyone like a locked door. Near the ticket counter, a man in a business coat begins shouting. He says the railway sold him a ticket and therefore owes him transportation. The clerk agrees. The man asks where the transportation is. The clerk says it is waiting on the track. The man asks why he's not inside it. The clerk says the train is waiting more successfully than the passengers are. A few people laugh despite themselves. The angry man does not. He leaves the counter and paces toward the windows. The station manager orders additional lamps brought into the central hall. Kerosene lanterns appear on tables and crates, their flames glowing behind cloudy glass. Electric light still burns above, but weakly. The smaller lamps create warmer circles around the crowd. Shadows move across tired faces. Children sleep in awkward positions. A woman uses her muff as a pillow. Two porters stretch out near the baggage room with folded coats beneath their heads, ready to rise when called. You try to rest. Your eyes close, but sleep refuses to settle. Every new sound suggests departure. A bell from the platform, a door opening, boots running along the passage. Each time you lift your head. Each time nothing follows. No law agreement has been reached on whether prolonged waiting feels shorter when people receive frequent updates or longer because every announcement renews attention. Some researchers emphasize the comfort of information. Others note that uncertain news can keep anxiety awake more effectively than silence. The station appears to prove both arguments. When no announcement comes, people complain. When one arrives, people become restless. A young clerk begins a card game on top of his suitcase. 3 strangers join him. The cards are soft at the corners, and one bears a dark coffee stain. They play quietly, using matchsticks instead of coins. The salesman watches for several rounds, then begins offering advice no one requested. He is invited to join only after promising silence. He breaks that promise almost immediately. Nearby, the violinist opens her case and tightens one string. She draws the bow across it very softly. The note is low and warm, barely louder than breath. People turn. She plays a slow melody, simple enough to feel familiar even to those who do not know it. The sound rises toward the ceiling and returns softened. Conversation fades. The station changes. For a few minutes, it is no longer a failed machine of schedules and signals. It becomes a room of listening people, each carrying a private reason to reach home. The child beneath the blanket opens her eyes. The carpenter places the red horse beside her. The soldier stands with his back against a column, watching the musician's hand move. The nurse pauses near the first aid door. You let the melody pass through the kill. When it ends, no one applauds at first. The silence remains for a heartbeat, gentle and complete. Then quiet clapping begins near the benches and spreads across the halls. The violinist lowers her head. A bell sounds beyond the platform gate. This time, footsteps follow. The dispatcher returns carrying a fresh message. He speaks with the station manager, who reads the page twice. Passengers rise. The manager looks toward the crowd and announces that the track is nearly passable. The final inspection is underway. No boarding order has been given, yet the words nearly passable move through the station like the first hint of morning. You stand beneath the clock. Midnight is already receding. The last train has not come, but for the first time in hours, its absence feels less like an ending. The announcement changes the crowd without releasing it. People remain inside the station, still uncertain. Yet the possibility of departure gives purpose to tired hands. Coats are straightened, children are lifted from benches, suitcases are checked, tickets appear from pockets and purses, then disappear again for safekeeping. You notice that fatigue has made everyone slower, but also more attentive to one another. Near the central aisle, an elderly man tries to stand. His knees fail on the first attempt. A porter sees him, sets down a luggage strap, and offers both hands. The man rises carefully, keeping his dignity while accepting the help. His daughter thanks the porter. The porter says nothing is owed. He moves on before she can offer a coin. A few yards away, a woman searches through her handbag with growing alarm. She removes a handkerchief, 2 letters, a comb, and a small purse, but no ticket. Her breathing quickens. People beside her begin checking the floor. You join them. Someone lifts the bench. Another person examines the folds of her coat. The ticket is found beneath the shoe of a sleeping salesman, who wakes to discover 6 strangers staring at his foot. He moves it at once, then apologizes to the ticket as though it has suffered personally. The woman laughs with relief. Records confirm that railway employees and volunteer groups often assisted stranded passengers during severe weather, providing directions, basic medical attention, food, and shelter when possible. Such efforts were rarely perfect, but they could turn a dangerous delay into a manageable night. A station clerk carries a box through the concourse and asks for spare clothing. Several passengers contribute what they can. A factory worker removes a knitted cap. A mother offers an extra pair of socks. The soldier gives up his second scarf, proving that his earlier claim was true after all. The items are taken to the first aid room, where several travellers sit wrapped in blankets. One man has removed his wet shoes, another holds a warm cloth against his hands. The pale young worker rests with his eyes closed while the nurse checks his pulse. You see no grand speeches. Kindness arrives in quiet pieces: a cup of water, a dry sleeve, a place near the wall, a hand placed beneath an elbow before someone falls. Oddly enough, lost property rooms in large stations sometimes contained extraordinary collections of ordinary things: umbrellas, gloves, hats, books, lunch tins, toys, and even false teeth waited for owners who might never return. Tonight, however, almost every abandoned object is quickly claimed, because nothing useful can remain lonely for long. A boy finds a single wool glove near the restaurant. He holds it above his head and calls for its owner. No one answers. He places it on his colder hand and continues searching. Several minutes later, a cleaner recognizes it and points toward a woman near the platform gate. The boy delivers the glove. The woman thanks him and offers him a small biscuit. He accepts with the solemn expression of someone completing official business. Near the baggage room, a wooden crate has split open. Books have fallen across the floor, their covers bending under boots and damp snow. The owner, a thin school teacher, kneels in distress. Passengers form a loose circle around her. You gather 2 volumes. The carpenter repairs the crate with cord and a narrow strip of wood. The printer wipes moisture from several covers. The school teacher counts every book twice and discovers that none are missing. She says the books belong to her pupils. The carpenter tells her that children are careless with books anyway. She replies that this does not permit adults to begin early. He accepts the correction. Scholars disagree on whether shared emergencies create lasting trust between strangers or only brief moments of cooperation. Some believe that public hardship reveals deep habits of mutual care. Others argue that people help because the situation demands it, then return to familiar divisions once the danger passes. Tonight, no one asks whether the kindness will last. The help is needed now. At the restaurant counter, the remaining soup is divided into smaller portions so more people can eat. The cook adds hot water and seasoning. The result is thin, but warm. A wealthy passenger quietly pays for every child still waiting in line. He asks the clerk not to announce it. The clerk announces it anyway, though he does not name the donors. Parents lift their cups in silent gratitude. The donor studies the departure board with intense concentration. The nurse requests assistance carrying water to the first aid room. You take one side of a heavy metal container while the soldier takes the other. The handle presses into your fingers. Water moves inside with each step. The path through the concourse opens slowly. People shift bags and feet. A girl reaches out to steady the container when it tilts. An old man holds a door. By the time you reach the first aid room, a task meant for 2 people has received help from 12. Inside, the air smells of soap, damp cloth, and medicine. The child with the cough is sleeping peacefully. Her father sits beside her, one hand resting near her shoulder. The pale worker is awake now. The nurse says he has a fever and should not board the train. His face tightens. He says he has no place to stay. The station manager, standing in the doorway, explains that a nearby lodging house has agreed to take several sick passengers. A railway cart will carry them when the street becomes passable. The worker asks how much it will cost. The manager says the matter has been arranged. You suspect several coins have already changed hands among people who will never tell him. Back in the concourse, passengers begin organising themselves near the gate. Families move to one side. Those needing assistance stand near the front. Stronger travellers offer to carry bags for older passengers when boarding begins. A woman ties a bright ribbon around her suitcase so it will not be mistaken for another. The salesman offers ribbons from his sample case. Soon, half the luggage near the benches carries red, blue, or yellow cloth. The station becomes strangely cheerful for several minutes, as though every suitcase is dressed for a celebration it has not been invited to attend. A railway worker arrives with news that the platform will soon open. He asks passengers to move carefully and avoid pushing. People repeat the instruction down the line. Move carefully. Do not push. Help the children. Keep the aisle clear. The words travel through the crowd with unusual obedience. You feel a hand touch your sleeve. The elderly woman asks whether you can carry one end of her small trunk. You agree. The soldier takes the other before you can bend. The child hugs the wooden horse to her chest. The carpenter tells her to keep it. She looks at him in astonishment. He says every horse needs a traveller. Her grandmother begins to protest, but he turns away and pretends to examine his ticket. The platform gate remains closed for one final moment. Around you, strangers stand prepared to move together. No one has reached home. No journey is guaranteed. Yet the long delay has created something the railway never scheduled. Beneath dim lamps and a weary clock, people have become responsible for more than their own arrival. The first sign comes as a faint vibration beneath your boots. At first, you mistake it for shifting luggage or the restless movement of the crowd. Then the floor trembles again very slightly, and a low sound travels through the platform doors. It is not yet the sound of a passenger train. It is deeper, slower, and more cautious. A railway worker lifts his lantern and looks toward the track. The gate attendant turns his head. Several passengers stop speaking in the same instant. The sound grows. Metal wheels move somewhere beyond the storm. A whistle follows, muffled by distance and snow. The crowd leans forward. The maintenance engineer emerges beneath the station roof with its front lamp glowing through a crust of ice. Snow clings to the boiler and running boards. Men stand on the rear car beside shovels, ropes, and sand buckets. Their coats are stiff with frozen moisture, and their faces carry the grey exhaustion of people who have been fighting weather mile by mile. The engine stops with a long release of steam. Warm vapour rolls across the platform, touching windows and disappearing into the rafters. For a moment, the air smells strongly of coal smoke, oil, and wet steel. The returning crew receives no grand welcome, yet every person near the gate watches them with gratitude. Records confirm that railway maintenance crews often worked ahead of passenger services during severe storms, inspecting rails, clearing switches, checking bridges, and repairing signal connections. Their work was dangerous precisely because it was slow, repetitive, and performed in conditions where a hidden obstruction could cause serious trouble. A foreman climbs down from the engine. He walks with one leg stiff from the cold. The station manager meets him beside the platform office, and the two speak over a map spread across a crate. You cannot hear every word, but certain phrases travel clearly. One track open. Signal damaged. Branch removed. Drift still building. The manager points toward a junction farther north. The foreman shakes his head, then draws a finger along an alternate route. The dispatcher joins them and studies as they stop. The waiting passengers become silent enough to hear paper rustle. A curious footnote of railway signalling is that crews could sometimes use hand lamps, flags, written orders, and carefully spaced movements when automatic systems failed. This method demanded discipline and clear communication. It also demanded that no one become imaginative at the wrong moment. The dispatcher calls for two signalmen. They arrive carrying lanterns fitted with coloured glass. One lamp glows red, another glows green. A third remains dark until needed. The men are told to travel ahead and take positions at specific points along the line. A passenger asks whether the damaged signals make the journey unsafe. The station manager answers that no train will depart until temporary safeguards are in place. Another passenger asks whether those safeguards are reliable. The manager says they are reliable when instructions are followed exactly. This is comforting in theory. Human beings, as everyone knows, have a complicated relationship with exact instructions. The signalmen board the maintenance engine, fresh coal is loaded, a worker checks the front lamp and wipes ice from its glass. Another places sealed written orders inside a leather case. The foreman remains on the platform. He tells the manager that snow is blowing back over cleared sections almost as quickly as crews remove it. The track is open now, but it may not remain open for long. The phrase passes quietly through the passengers. Open now, not open forever. The final train must move soon or not at all. Scholars continue to debate whether railway decisions during historic storms were guided more by public pressure, commercial duty, or genuine confidence in the crews and equipment. Official reports often emphasize caution and procedure, while private accounts sometimes describe hurried choices made beneath the weight of hundreds of waiting lives. You can see the pressure gathering around the manager. Travellers surround him with questions. Will families be allowed to board first? Will the train stop at every station? Can luggage be loaded? Will there be heat inside the car? He raises both hands. The train is being prepared. Only essential baggage may be taken aboard. The service will move slowly. Stops may change according to the track conditions. Passengers must obey every instruction from the crew. No one cheers, but the air tightens with readiness. Behind a second set of doors, a locomotive begins to breathe. Steam pulses from beneath its wheels. A bell rings once. Workers move along the platform, checking couplings, lamps, brakes, and steps. The engine is larger than the maintenance machine, black and powerful beneath a coating of snow. Its headlamp comes alive. The beam reaches into the storm, illuminating rails that appear for a few yards before fading again. You feel hope rise, though no gate has opened. A mechanic climbs beneath one carriage with a lantern. Another walks along the roofline, inspecting vents and clearing snow. Porters spread sand on the platform where ice has formed. The dining car will remain closed, and one baggage car has been removed to reduce weight. Every decision makes the train leaner, lighter, and more likely to survive the journeys. The maintenance engine pulls away again, carrying the signalman into the darkness. Its lamp becomes a yellow point, then nothing. The final train remains under the roof, building steam. A station clerk moves through the crowd, checking tickets before the gate opens. Passengers hold them high. Children wake. Blankets are folded. Bags are lifted from the floor. The older woman grips your arm while the soldier secures her trunk with rope. The child holds the red wooden horse beneath her coat, protecting it from snow. The violinist fastens her case. The printer places his folded newspaper inside his jacket. The salesman closes the final brass clasp on his sample case. Every object is ready. Every eye turns toward the gate. A green lamp appears far beyond the platform, dim and unsteady through the storm. The attendant sees it first. Then the dispatcher. The signal holds. The station manager removes his watch, studies its face, and nods. The chain across the gate falls loose. For one suspended breath, no one moves. Then the attendant opens the passage and calls for passengers to proceed slowly toward the last train home. The crowd moves toward the platform in a slow, compressed current. You feel the pressure of bodies behind you, yet no one pushes hard. The repeated instructions have taken root. Parents hold children close. Stronger passengers lift trunks and cases. Porters stand along the passage, guiding each person around patches of ice. Cold air strikes your face the moment you cross the gate. The platform roof offers little protection from the wind. Snow sweeps beneath it in white ribbons, gathering around pillars and carriage steps. Lamps burn along the track, their light turning each flake briefly gold before darkness takes it again. The locomotive waits at the front of the train, breathing clouds of steam. Its metal sides shine with moisture. Each pulse from the engine seems to travel through the platform and into your chest. A conductor stands beside the first carriage with a lantern and a list. He calls for elderly passengers, families with young children, and those needing assistance to board before the main crowd. The older woman grips your sleeve. You and the soldier carry her trunk between you. The wooden handles are slick with melted snow. The child walks close beside her grandmother, one arm wrapped around the red horse beneath her coat. A porter steadies them at the carriage step. The child climbs first. Her grandmother follows. The trunk is lifted into the doorway and disappears inside. The soldier touches the edge of his cap as the older woman thanks him. She says she hopes his own train will leave soon. He replies that tonight, this is everyone's train. Records confirm that railway companies used conductors, brakemen, porters, and station staff to manage boarding, tickets, baggage, and passenger safety. During severe disruptions, ordinary procedures could be altered quickly. with priority given to vulnerable travellers and essential workers. The train carries fewer cars than expected. Several have been removed to reduce weight and make the locomotive's work easier. The remaining carriages fill rapidly. Passengers who had hoped for private compartments now discover that empty seats have become a rare and beautiful fantasy. A porter directs you toward the third carriage. You step onto the iron stair, gripping the cold rail. Snow has collected in the corners, your boot slips slightly, and a hand catches your elbow from behind. It is the carpenter. He smiles and says the railway has provided enough excitement without adding a fall. You enter the carriage. Warmth meets you, though it is mixed with the coal smoke. Damp wool, leather seats, and the sharp scent of wet boots. Lamps glow along the walls, frost clouds the windows. Every surface seems occupied by a coat, bag, hat, or human being attempting to become smaller. The seamstress has found a place near the centre. She lifts her cloth bag from the seat beside her and offers you the space. You sit. The cushion is stiff, but it feels luxurious after the station bench. Across the aisle, the violinist places her case carefully on the luggage rack. Her brother stands beneath it with both hands raised, ready to catch the instrument if the rack fails. The salesman squeezes into a corner with his sample cases balanced between his knees. A railway porter moves through the carriage, asking the passengers to keep the aisle clear. This request is reasonable and nearly impossible. Boots protrude from seats, children lie across laps, parcels fill the floor. One woman has brought a basket containing a very annoyed chicken. A curious footnote of railway travel is that passengers sometimes carried small animals aboard trains, especially when returning from markets or visiting relatives. Rules varied, enforcement varied more, and a determined chicken could defeat almost any official policy through persistence alone. The bird makes a low, suspicious sound from beneath the cloth. The salesman peers toward the basket. The woman warns him not to put his fingers near it. He says he had no such ambition. At the front of the carriage, the conductor enters and raises his lantern. He explains that the train will travel under temporary signal control. It may stop without warning. Passengers must remain seated whenever possible and must not open the outer doors. He asks everyone to keep tickets read. Tickets appear again. Some are dry and crisp. Others have been folded, crumpled, dampened, and guarded through the night like legal documents proving the right to hope. The conductor punches yours and moves on. At the rear door, an argument begins. A passenger insists that his large trunk must travel in the carriage. The porter explains that it blocks the passage. The passenger says the trunk contains valuable property. The porter looks at the crowd. He says every person in the aisle also contains valuable property. The trunk is sent to the reduced baggage car. The carriage approves silently. No agreement has been reached on how strictly boarding priorities were followed during major transport emergencies. Some personal accounts praise orderly cooperation. Others describe confusion, favoritism, and desperate passengers forcing their way forward. Tonight, discipline survives, but only because exhaustion has left little energy for rebellion. A whistle sounds outside. The carriage becomes still. A brakeman walks along the platform, checking each door. He pulls the handle, looks through the window, and moves to the next car. Porters step down. Station employees raise lanterns. The locomotive releases a heavier cloud of steam, yet the train does not move. A message arrives from the front. One coupling must be inspected again. A worker kneels between two carriages with a lamp. Passengers lean toward the windows, though frost hides most of the view. The delay lasts several minutes. Inside, hope becomes fragile. You hear a child ask whether the train is broken. His father says it's only being careful. The answer calms more than one adult. At last, the worker rises and signals with his hand. The conductor moves through the carriage once more. He counts standing passengers, checks the stove, and secures the inner door. The seamstress removes her hat and smooths her hair. The printer folds his coat beneath his head. The carpenter rests both hands on his knees. The soldier stands near the far end because every seat is taken. You offer to move? He refuses. He says he has spent enough time sitting. The train bell rings twice. Outside, lanterns lift. A deep pull passes through the carriage as the locomotive takes the weight of the cars. Couplings tighten one by one with heavy metallic knocks. The first jolt sends luggage shifting. The second causes the chicken to protest loudly. Then the wheels turn. Slowly, almost reluctantly, the platform begins to move past the windows. Lamps slide backward. Pillars vanish. Station workers remain visible for a few seconds, their lanterns raised in the storm. The great roof falls behind. Snow closes around the train. Inside the crowded carriage, no one speaks above a whisper. Relief is too delicate for celebration. You feel the rails beneath you. The last train is finally carrying you home. The train enters the storm like a dark needle moving through endless white cloth. You feel each turn of the wheels beneath the floor. The rhythm is slow, uneven, and careful. Metal presses against metal with a deep grinding sound, then eases again as the engine tests the buried line. Outside the window, almost nothing can be seen. Snow strikes the glass and melts into crooked streams. Frost gathers along the edges, narrowing the view to a small oval. Through it, you catch brief flashes of signal lamps, telegraph poles, and walls coated in white. Then darkness returns. The carriage rocks gently. Every movement causes luggage to shift on the racks. The violin case creaks above the aisle. The salesman's sample boxes knock together between his knees. Beneath the cloth in the basket, the chicken offers a low complaint that suggests railway travel has failed to meet its standards. The passengers listen to the engine. Its labour can be heard through the entire train. A heavy pull, a burst of steam, the steady beat of machinery, then a slower beat as the wheels begin to slip. Sand drops onto the rails somewhere ahead. The engine strains again, finds its grip, and moves forward. Records confirm that steam locomotives required careful control on snowy and icy tracks. Engineers adjusted speed, power, and braking while crews used sand to improve traction. Too much force could cause the wheels to spin. Too little could leave the train motionless inside a drift. The journey becomes a lesson in patience measured by yards. You pass beneath a bridge so slowly that snow falling from its edge appears to hang beside the window. A worker stands near the track with a green lantern. His coat whips in the wind. He holds the signal steady until the final carriage passes him. For 1 second his face is visible, then he is gone. The conductor moves through the aisle, bracing one hand against each seat as the car sways. He speaks quietly with the brakeman near the rear door. A temporary signal lies ahead. The train may stop while a crew checks the next stretch of track. No one complains. Motion, however slow, feels too precious to insult. The train rounds a bend. A distant row of houses appears through the snow, their upper windows dim and blurred. You see chimneys leaning over white roofs. A single lamp burns in an attic room. Then the houses disappear behind a wall of drifting snow. A curious footnote of winter railway travel is that engines sometimes carried extra tools, fuel, water, and food during dangerous conditions. A passenger train could become a travelling workshop and shelter and rescue machine all at once. The timetable might say a transportation, but the storm demanded several other occupations. The train stops. The halt comes without warning, but without violence. The wheels cease turning. The engine continues breathing at the front, sending faint tremors through the carriage. People look toward the windows. Nothing moves outside except snow. A child asks whether this is a station. His father says it is not. The conductor explains that a signal man is checking the line ahead. The silence deepens. You hear the stove ticking as heat moves through its iron shell. Someone opens a food parcel. Paper rustles. A baby stirs and gives one tired cry before settling again. Minutes pass. The storm presses against the carriage as if testing every window and seam. Scholars remain divided over how passengers understood danger during slow emergency journeys. Some accounts describe calm confidence in railway crews. Others reveal that travellers often had little idea where they were. why they had stopped, or whether the route ahead remained passable. You feel that uncertainty now. The train could be 1 mile from the station or 10. A safe stretch of rail could lie ahead. So could another drift. The conductor receives a signal from outside. A lantern swings once near the front. The engine answers with a whistle. The wheels begin moving again. This time the train climbs. You feel the slope through the strain of the locomotive. The carriage leans slightly, and passengers shift against their seats. Steam surges. The wheels slip, catch, and slip once more. The engine fights for every foot. The carpenter grips the seat ahead of him. The seamstress closes her eyes. The soldier stands with knees bent, balanced easily despite the motion. The salesman whispers encouragement toward the locomotive, as though it can hear him. "Come on, old girl." A few passengers repeat the phrase softly. "Come on." The train slows to almost nothing. Then the engine finds traction. The carriage lurches forward, not fast but firmly. A quiet cheer rises, careful and brief, as though loud approval might distract the machinery. At the top of the grade, the train stops beside a cluster of lanterns. Workers stand waist-deep in a drift, cutting a channel through snow that has blown across the rails. Their shovels rise and fall under the lamps. Steam from the engine wraps around them. One man strikes the side of the carriage with his gloved hand as he passes. The sound is solid and reassuring. The train remains still while the crew clears the final section. Inside, time loosens. The violinist removes her instrument from its case and plays several soft notes. They tremble with the movement of the carriage, then settle into a gentle tune. It is not the same melody heard in the station. This one is lighter, carrying the feeling of a road slowly opening. The older child with the red horse rolls it along the window ledge. Its wooden wheels make a soft clicking sound. The soldier watches the snow workers through the glass. The nurse, seated near the opposite door, checks a sleeping passenger's forehead and adjusts a blanket around his shoulders. The station feels far away now. The city feels distant too. The train has become its own small world, held together by steam, patience, and the shared belief that forward movement will continue. A lantern waves outside. The conductor raises his own lamp. The engine whistle answers. Once more, the train begins to crawl. Snow rises beside the wheels in pale clouds. Telegraph poles pass slowly, one by one. Their wires hum faintly in the wind. You lean your head against the cold window. The sound of the rails grows steadier. Not fast, not certain, but steady. Somewhere beyond the white darkness, home remains fixed in its place, waiting while the train moves toward it 1 careful mile at a time. The first homes appear as scattered lights beyond the glass. At first, there are only small golden points suspended in the storm. Then the train draws closer, and shapes gather around them. A roof slopes beneath heavy snow. A porch leans toward the track. Curtains glow faintly behind frost-covered windows. You press nearer to the glass. Each light suggests a room. A table. A stove. A pair of boots drying near a door. The train passes slowly enough for you to imagine the people inside. Perhaps a mother stands at the window with one hand resting against the curtain. Perhaps an old man sits beside the stove, pretending not to listen for the whistle. Perhaps a child has been carried to bed but refuses to sleep until familiar footsteps return. The lights vanish behind snow, then appear again farther along the line. One house has 3 lamps burning downstairs. Another shows only a thin glow beneath a shutter. A farmhouse stands alone near a field, its windows bright against the surrounding dark. Smoke struggles upward from the chimney before the wind tears it sideways. Records confirm that many households in 1918 depended on coal, wood, oil, or gas for heat and light, while electric service remained uneven outside denser neighbourhoods. A single lamp in a window could therefore represent both comfort and careful economies. You picture someone trimming a wick to save oil. The flame lowers. The room darkens. Still, the lamp remains lit because someone is expected home. Inside the carriage, passengers begin recognizing landmarks. A man near the front points toward a church tower barely visible through the snow. The seamstress knows a row of mills by the shape of their roofs. The printer identifies a water tank beside the line, though frost has turned its iron frame into a pale skeleton. Each discovery creates a murmur of relief. The train is no longer wandering through featureless night. It is passing places with names. The conductor moves along the aisle and announces that the next stop will be made only if the platform remains clear. Passengers bound for that town gather coats and bags without standing. No one wishes to block the passage. A woman wakes her husband by touching his shoulder. He opens his eyes in confusion. She tells him they are nearly there. He looks toward the window and sees nothing. She points to a distant lamp. That one light is enough. A curious footnote of winter travel is that families sometimes place distinctive lamps or coloured shades in windows so returning relatives could recognise the correct house from a dark road or railway line. In a storm, a familiar glow could become a private signal stronger than any official signpost. The train slows beside a cluster of buildings. Snow covers the station platform so deeply that workers have carved a narrow path from the rail to the waiting room. 2 lanterns mark the edges. A station agent stands in the centre, waving a green lamp. The wheels grind. The carriage stops. The outer door opens and wind pours inside. 3 passengers step down. A woman waiting on the platform rushes forward and embraces the first man before he has fully found his balance. The second passenger lifts a sleeping boy into the arms of an older couple. The third stands alone for a moment, searching the darkness. Then someone calls his name. He turns toward the voice and disappears into the snow. The door closes. Warmth slowly returns to the carriage. No agreement has been reached on how much such homecoming scenes shaped popular memories of rail travel during storms. Some historians view them as romantic images created by later storytelling. Others argue that personal diaries and family accounts preserve genuine moments of intense relief after dangerous journeys. You need no argument tonight. The relief is visible. It changes faces. It loosens shoulders. It turns a dark platform into a place of safety. The train starts again. Fewer passengers remain now. Empty seats appear for the first time. The soldier finally sits. The salesman places one sample case beside him rather than on his knees. The seamstress stretches her legs carefully beneath the opposite bench. The chicken basket has also gained space. The bird responds by falling silent, perhaps satisfied that its complaints have improved service. You move to the window seat. The glass remains cold against your temple, but the view has widened. The snowfall is less violent here. You can see fences, trees, and narrow roads beneath the white covering. A horse-drawn sleigh moves along one road with a lantern hanging from its side. The driver leans forward beneath a blanket. The horse lowers its head against the wind and continues at a patient pace. Farther away, a house stands with every front window illuminated. Someone has placed candles along the sill. The effect is almost ceremonial. The printer notices it too. He says that family must be waiting for half the county. The carpenter replies that perhaps one person is enough reason for every light. No one answers. The thought settles quietly among you. The train crosses a small bridge. Below, dark water moves between shelves of ice. The sound changes beneath the wheels, coming hollow and rhythmic. For several seconds, the carriage seems suspended above nothing. Then solid ground returns. A row of cottages appears near the track. Snow has covered the fences, but paths have been cleared from doors to gates. At one house, a woman stands outside holding a lantern beneath her coat to protect the flame. The train does not stop. She watches every window pass. Perhaps the person she waits for is aboard another car. Perhaps no one is coming tonight. The lamp remains raised until darkness hides her. You think of the unseen people connected to every passenger. A sister sitting at a kitchen table. A husband pacing between stove and window. A child asking the same question every few minutes. When will they arrive? No answer travels ahead of the train. Only the whistle. The engineer sounds it near each crossing. The long note moves across fields and rooftops, warning those outside and reassuring those within. Dogs begin barking from distant yards. A porch door opens. A figure steps into the light. The whistle says the railway still lives. It says someone is moving through the storm. It says the night has not closed every road. The conductor announces another stop. This one is yours soon, though not yet. You check your ticket, then your gloves, then the buttons of your coat. The motions are simple, but they make home feel closer. Around you, passengers do the same. The wooden horse is tucked safely beneath the child's arm. The violin case is secured. The printer places his hat on his head. The soldier tightens his boots. Outside, more lamps appear along the snowy line. They do not form a city, they form a promise. One by one, the glowing windows pass through the darkness, each holding a small world of warmth while the train carries you nearer. The conductor calls the name of your station, and the sound passes through the carriage like a hand resting gently on your shoulder. You sit upright at once. The familiar name feels strange after so many hours. It belongs to ordinary mornings, market days, short walks, and predictable returns. Now it sounds almost sacred. Passengers bound for the stop begin collecting their belongings. Coats are buttoned, scarves are tightened, parcels disappear beneath arms. The narrow aisle fills with careful movement as people prepare without blocking one another. You lift your bag and test its weight. The seamstress gathers her cloth parcel. The printer folds the last newspaper beneath his arm. The carpenter checks the small empty space where the red horse once rested, then smiles toward the child holding it farther down the car. The soldier rises beside him and fastens his coat. Outside, the train slows. The rhythm beneath the floor stretches farther apart. Wheels grind softly against snow packed near the rail. Steam drifts past the window, and the lamps inside the carriage tremble with each turn of the track. You wipe a patch of frost from the glass. At first there is only darkness. Then a single platform lamp appears. Its light reveals snowbank nearly to the edge of the station roof. The sign bearing the town name is half buried, with only the upper letters visible. A narrow passage has been shoveled beside the track, but fresh snow is already softening its edges. The platform looks less like a destination and more like a small island cut from the storm. Records confirm that local stations depended heavily on station agents, section crews, and nearby residents during severe winter weather. When official resources were limited, people cleared platforms, carried lanterns, delivered messages, and opened waiting rooms for stranded travellers. 3 figures stand beneath the station awning. One is the agent holding a green lamp. Another is a railway worker with a shovel. The third wears a long coat and keeps turning toward the approaching train. You cannot see the face clearly. Your heart moves faster anyway. The locomotive whistle sounds. The note rolls across the rooftops and returns faintly from the hills. A dog begins barking somewhere beyond the station. A door opens in a nearby house, releasing a square of the yellow light onto the snow. The train enters the platform at walking pace. The brakes tighten. A final metallic shudder passes through the car. Then the wheels stop. For one breath, everyone remains till the conductor opens the door. Cold air pours inside, sharper than you expect after the heavy warmth of the carriage. Snowflakes spin across the floor and vanish beneath boots. The first passenger descends. A porter stands below, holding the rail and warning each traveller about the hidden ice on the final step. You wait your turn. The seamstress moves ahead of you, one hand gripping her parcel. The printer follows, stepping cautiously onto the packed snow. The soldier passes his bag down first, then jumps lightly to the platform. When you reach the door, the wind touches your face with such force that your eyes water. You place one boot on the iron step. Then the next. The platform shifts beneath you, not because it moves, but because your body still remembers the train. A porter steadies your arm. Your feet reach the snow. The sound changes immediately. Inside the carriage, every noise had been enclosed by walls, wheels, and warm bodies. Outside, the storm opens around you. Wind crosses the platform, snow whispers against wood, steam sighs from the engine and drifts into darkness. A curious footnote of rural station life is that agents often performed many duties at once. One person might sell tickets, manage freight, send messages, tend lamps, shovel snow, and answer every question from every traveller, all while being blamed for weather created at no personal request. The station agent now directs people toward the waiting room. He warns that the road is deeply covered and asks whether anyone lacks a safe way home. Several passengers raise their hands. A wagon with runners has been arranged for those travelling farther. Nearby families have brought blankets and lanterns. The station has prepared hot water, though the agent apologises that the coffee ran out hours ago. No one complains. You step away from the carriage and search the platform. The third figure beneath the awning turns. A familiar face emerges from beneath a hat covered in snow. Relief reaches you before words. The waiting figure moves forward, boots sinking into the drift, and calls your name. The voice is tired, worried, and unmistakably real. You answer. The distance between you closes quickly. A hand grips your shoulder. Another takes your bag. There is no grand declaration, no speech could improve the moment. The simple fact of arrival is enough. Behind you, other reunions unfold. The seamstress is met by a young woman carrying a lantern. They embrace and immediately begin arguing about why one of them waited outside in such weather. The printer sees a lamp raised near the station path. His face changes. He removes his hat and waves it above his head. The carpenter stands alone for a few moments, scanning the platform. Then a boy runs from the waiting room and nearly knocks him backward. The carpenter laughs and lifts him into both arms. The soldier remains near the carriage door. No one appears to be waiting for him. He does not seem surprised. The station agent offers him a place in the wagon, and he accepts with a quiet nod. Scholars continue to debate how much emotional weight should be placed on private moments that leave little written evidence. Official histories preserve routes, weather reports, and service disruptions. Family memory preserves the hand at the shoulder, the lamp in the snow, and the voice heard at the edge of exhaustion. You understand which details matter now. The train bell rings. Passengers still aboard lean toward the windows. Those on the platform step back. The conductor raises his lantern, and the locomotive answers with a low whistle. The train begins moving again. Slowly the carriages pass. You see the child holding the red horse against the window. She notices the carpenter and lifts the toy in farewell. He raises one hand. The salesman appears behind her, waving a peppermint sweet. The violinist sits with her case beside her, her face pale in the lamplight. Then the final carriage disappears into snow. The sound of the wheels fades along the line. The station grows quiet. You stand beneath the awning with your bag now carried by someone else. The path home lies beyond the platform, narrow and white, marked by the lantern light. It is not a long walk. Tonight, it feels like the final crossing of a continent. You step from the station into the snow, leaving the rails behind as the wind softens around the first familiar road. The road from the station curves beneath trees bowed by snow. You walk slowly, placing each boot inside the narrow trail already opened by the lantern bearer beside you. The snow reaches above your ankles and hides the familiar stones beneath the surface. Every step requires care, but no urgency remains. The train has delivered you close enough for patience to feel safe again. The storm is changing. Snow still falls, yet the wind has weakened. Flakes descend in broad, quiet clusters instead of striking sideways. They settle on your hat, your shoulders, and the bag carried beside you. The night no longer seems determined to stop your passage. It merely asks you to move gently. A fence appears along the road, its rails softened into white curves. Beyond it, an orchard stands silent. Each branch carries a narrow ridge of snow. The trees look delicate from a distance, though you know their wood is strong enough to wait beneath winter until spring returns. Your lantern casts a small circle around your feet. Outside that circle, the landscape is blue, grey, and nearly without edges. A barn rises beside the road. Somewhere inside, an animal shifts against straw. You hear the quiet scrape of a hoof, then a low breath. The sound is ordinary and deeply comforting. Life continues here without announcements, departure boards, or station clocks. Records confirm that communities often relied on neighbours during severe winter storms to open paths, check isolated homes, carry fuel, and help travellers reach shelter. The work rarely entered formal reports, yet it made survival possible across towns and countryside. You pass a house where the porch has been cleared. A bucket stands beside the door. A shovel rests against the wall. Curtains part as you approach, and a face appears behind the glass. The person inside recognises your companion and lifts one hand. Your companion raises the lantern in reply. No words cross the snow. None are needed. A little farther on, the road climbs. Your legs feel heavy. Damp clothing pulls at your shoulders. The cold has settled into your boots, and your fingers ache despite the gloves. Home is visible now. At first, it is only a warm square between trees. Then the roof appears. Then the chimney. Smoke rises in a thin line before bending toward the east. A curious footnote of winter homecomings is that people sometimes listened for distinctive footsteps rather than knocks. The rhythm of a family member crossing a porch could be recognised through walls, especially late at night. Apparently, even boots develop personality when someone is missed long enough. You imagine the sound yours will make. The gate gives a familiar squeak when pushed. The path has been cleared once, but fresh snow has covered it. You cross the yard slowly. Light spills beneath the front door, creating a golden line across the porch. Your companion sets down the bag. Before you can reach for the latch, the door opens. Warm air meets you. It carries the smell of coal, soap, bread, and something simmering in a covered pot. The scent is so familiar that the entire journey seems to loosen inside your chest. Someone stands in the doorway wearing a housecoat and worried expression. The first words are not poetic. You are asked why it took so long. You begin explaining the storm, the station, the blocked tracks, and the final train. The listener pulls you inside before the explanation is complete. The door closes. Your coat is removed. Snow falls from it onto the floor. Your gloves are placed near the stove. A chair waits beside the table, and a cup is filled with something hot before you can protest that you are not hungry. You sit, heat reaches your face and hands. The room is quiet except for the stove, the clock, and the gentle tapping of snow against the window. Scholars still differ over whether great public events are best understood through official decisions or private experiences. One side follows institutions, machinery, and recorded outcomes. Another studies kitchens, clothing, family worry, and the ordinary gestures that reveal how history actually felt. Here, the answer seems simple. The storm mattered because the tracks vanished. It mattered because a city stopped moving. It also mattered because someone kept a lamp burning for you. You lift the cup. Steam rises slowly. Outside, the road disappears beneath fresh snow. The station is hidden beyond the trees. The train continues toward other platforms, carrying other tired passengers toward other waiting windows. Inside, your boots begin to dry. The clock moves toward morning. No one asks you to hurry now. You listen to the low fire and let your shoulders rest. The great machinery of the night grows distant. Signals, wheels, shovels, and whistles soften into memory. The lamp beside you burns steadily. The house settles around the cold, and you are home. As the snow grows quieter beyond the glass, you can let the long night fade into a softer place. Perhaps one small moment remains with you, the lantern raised beside the track, the wooden horse in a child's hands, the patient engine pressing through the storm, or the warm doorway opening at last. Share in the comments which moments stayed with you most, and tell us what city or town you're listening from tonight. Your stories make this quiet gathering feel less like a distant channel and more like a room filled with gentle company. When you are ready for another journey, The next video is waiting to carry you into a different night, another age, and another human story told at a peaceful pace. For now, let your breathing slow, let the final whistle drift beyond the snow, let every lamp grow soft, every road become still, and every worried thought find its way home. Blessings to you and your family.